First off, want to thank everyone for joining us today as part of the Tech Showcase on brand tracking. There's obviously a lot going on in the world, and so glad we can spend a little bit of time here to talk about how to navigate these uncertain times with our Agile brand tracker. Also, as we go through this, just want to mention that we do have live Q&A in the chat going on, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask during any time during this presentation. Just as we get started, I want to start off with some introductions. I have my colleague Karen Barnes here. Karen, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, of course. I'm the director of the solutions team here at Fuel Cycle, and I'm specifically dedicated to working on building out our Agile suite of quantitative tools, which includes this new brand health tracking solution that we're going through today.
Perfect. Thanks, Karen. And my name is Patrick Ip. I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing here at Fuel Cycle. Been with Fuel Cycle for about 2 years now, and my main focus is helping to design and launch our new products, like our brand tracking solution here. So just before we get actually started on the brand tracking, just want to give some quick background into Fuel Cycle as a whole. So Fuel Cycle was founded in 2006 and was one of the earliest companies to be a pioneer in online communities. And obviously a lot has changed since 2006. When I think about our product philosophy nowadays, I think as a product team, we reflect on all the changes that are occurring in the market. When we think about what's happening geopolitically with what's going on in Ukraine, we think about what's going on in the economy with inflation, with COVID. We talk about what's going on in the business environment with return to office. One of the biggest things that's going on right now is there's all these changes, and in tandem with that, we have all this access to data, more access to data than we've had in a decade in terms of what to do next. And so when I think about our redefinition as a company, the way I describe Fuel Cycle today is Fuel Cycle really is a place to answer your most pressing questions in uncertain times. And we have a lot of different solutions that are taking on this new mentality of being actionable. But today we're just going to focus on our brand tracking solution. And so just to make sure we're on the same page for brand trackers, the reason that we're talking about it, it's obviously one of the most important methodologies for a company. And most companies that are doing a brand tracker today are either doing it on an annual or quarterly cadence. It's generally pretty expensive and time consuming. In part of the discovery process of building our updated brand tracker, there's generally a dedicated team that's specifically focused on brand tracking. Which is often a 6-figure or potentially more in terms of price tag. And then the reporting deliverable is also quite extensive. It could be a 50-page slide deck, a 100-page slide deck, a 150-page slide deck, depending on how robust it is. So it's extremely important, but it's also one of the most exhaustive methodologies a company will go through. And I think, kind of in parallel with how we're trying to position Fuel Cycle today is there's all these changes that are going on in the market. We have access to all this data, but I think what companies really want is they want to know what to do. What's the actual steps that I should be taking with all these changes that are occurring in the market from things like the pandemic or COVID? For you as a research or insights professional, what recommendations can I actually make to the teams so they know how to action in terms of product mix, in terms of brand deliverables, things of that nature. And I'm going to actually switch over to Karen here to talk about the specifics of our brand tracker.
All right, thanks, Patrick. So when it comes to really understanding why we built a brand tracker here at Fuel Cycle, what we were seeking to address, the first thing that we built our solution around is this differentiated approach that we call a thick-thin model. It's also kind of the tracking and diagnostic phases of our research. And really that approach is meant to give you two views and also make you able to be a little bit more efficient with how you're running your models, make your dollar go further, and also be able to keep up with the pace of change in the market. So this starts with our thin model, which is more of our tracking of key metrics. So when you think of performance indicators, things like your conversion funnel of awareness, consideration, past purchase, likelihood to purchase again, things that are really interesting to you guys to understand how your business is changing, and key metrics that might indicate that you are increasing or decreasing in terms of your overall brand performance and brand health. That's the things that we're running much more frequently as a part of this thin model. We can execute it a lot more quickly with a lower sample size, so we can gain a lot of efficiency while still being able to keep a constant read on your overall brand health. However, when you start to see a change in those metrics where you might want to dig in a little bit more, get some diagnostics about what's happening, what might be encouraging a positive change, or what you might need to do to react to a negative change, that's where we know you need to react quickly and be able to deep dive into it. So that's where we have our more diagnostic or implicit waves that we can dig into either on a regular cadence or in a reaction to a market change to understand what might be happening and how you should go action against those. So we really built the foundation of our new model against those two waves to be able to create some efficiency and keep regular touch with your base, but not lose the depth and rigor and insight when and where you need it. And the ability to really get a faster cadence allows you to take faster action. And there's a couple of reasons why we landed on the cadence that we did, which is a monthly recommended overall tracking mechanism. That is because weekly oftentimes doesn't allow you to get the overall response to any market changes. Maybe you're doing a campaign and you want to see changes. Sometimes that's a little bit too fast to be able to actually recognize lags from those impacts. It also doesn't allow you to sample as deeply and so get as robust and assured of quality responses. But obviously, quarterly or annually, you're not going to be able to understand actually what the reaction was to the changes that you're making in the marketplace or to the monthly changes that might be happening in the world. So this cadence of monthly allows you to be able to tie back to any actions that you might be taking or any changes in the world while still being able to institute the rigor and depth of sample that you might want to see. And overall, these two waves allow us to be a lot more cost efficient. That's not only from obviously the light and heavy versions of the models that we're running, but also efficiencies that we've built up in terms of our sampling plans and approaches, as well as software and technology to support our back-end reporting that allows the traditional depth and rigor that you might get from a normal brand health tracker in a much more efficient way. We are also audience agnostic here at Fuel Cycle. So when you think about our advanced processes, we are able to enable those more frequent touch points by incurring our standard best practices. I know you guys are all familiar with traditional sample balancing wave over wave. This is a most important factor to note that your changes that you're seeing in your data are because of actual changes in the marketplace and not changes from your actual sample. But as many of you may know, Fuel Cycle has a long and rich history with communities and sample management. And so we have years and years of experience and best practices built up around how to recruit and engage respondents efficiently and effectively. And so we've put those into place with our brand health tracking solution as well. So we're getting the most efficient approach to be able to pick up that speed and rigor from your audience. The other secret sauce that we have to our brand health tracking approach is in our advanced software and analytics. And so not only is that automating a lot of the calculations that teams are doing manually for things like overall performance and conversion, but also it's adding on some advanced techniques that a researcher could not do by hand. Things like advanced drivers analysis to understand not only what's driving likelihood to purchase for your main purchase contingent today, but also how many people and how you should change brand attributes or functions or positioning in order to convert new purchasers or new promoters, whatever you might be trying to influence in your day-to-day. We also have advanced analytics in the terms of targeted segmentation, which uses machine learning modeling to be able to deep dive into a particular segment of interest. So say you have someone that's exhibiting a behavior, they're very likely to sign up for your new free trial or software or purchase your product. You can run this model to understand what segments of people, what of their millions of profiles and characteristics that we've gathered, make them a contingent that is likely to purchase your product or sign up for your service. and who is unlikely. So are you missing out on any major targets that you might be interested in? So we apply a lot of these advanced models as well as standard automated analytics to be able to up-level the results that you're getting in a very efficient way. And I know I can talk through this as much as I possibly can, but it's going to be a lot more interesting for me to show you a little bit about what our dashboard looks like today. So without further ado, I will jump into a quick demo of our reporting capabilities. All right, so I'm excited to hop through and go through the tool with you guys today. Just a heads up that this is the tool that our team internally uses to analyze and run reporting for each wave of brand health tracking that we run. This is something that's not fully integrated into our system today, but is something that we're hoping and working to integrate in the later half of the year, where eventually this will become an interactive dashboard that you guys can use on your own as clients as well. But today I did want to show you the tool to show you all the automation and the advanced analytics that are happening. So as I mentioned, is our overall flow of brand health tracking. There's a few components. One is tracking of core metrics that happens in our thin model, which is the tab that we're on right now. There's also deep dive diagnostics and behavioral and attitudinal attributes that we get into in our thicker waves, which is that second tab. And then obviously a core component of brand health tracking is wave over wave analysis, which we'll get into as well. In terms of the regular tracking metrics that we are gathering here, we start with the overall brand conversion funnel. So that includes unaided awareness of your brand and competitive brands in the category. We'll include brand counts to understand where you're falling out versus other competitors. And then we'll also include the conversion funnel. And one thing that I really want to note here that I think is important is that every conversion funnel is going to look a little bit different depending on where your brand is and what your objectives are, whether it's just gaining awareness early on in the funnel or being the top, so being your most likely to purchase later on. And maybe purchase isn't the ultimate goal that you have. Right here we have a retailer-based funnel, so it's around visits. But all of these metrics within the funnel itself can be adjusted based on your brand and industry and what you're looking to learn. So although there's a lot of automation to support these, when we set up a brand health tracker, we do set it up with your specific business and case in mind. And so this is going to look a little bit different for every single brand that we have set up here. This allows you to look at your overall conversion and funnel metrics versus the category average. And you can easily rotate here through a particular competitor that you want to look at or your own metrics to be able to see how you're performing. Now, one-off isn't always going to do it, and it's also really important to understand the significance of the differences that we're looking at. So for pretty much every chart that we have visualized here in our dashboard, we also are including statistical testing to determine any significant differences between individual performers here, whether it's in overall performance metrics or in conversion. You'll see a note here at the bottom as well. I noted that this is test data that we're going through today. This is not live or an actual representation of any of these brands. So you'll see there are only 15 responses. This is to help you where if you add a filter and are looking at a particular subgroup, it helps you make sure that you're not going too low and looking at groups that are going to be insignificant. So we do keep that in mind as well. We also want to hop into brand performance. So we look at future performance, and one of our proprietary analytics that we use here at Fuel Cycle is projected market share. So this uses an advanced analytical model that's been tested in market research journals as very closely correlated with actual in-market purchase behavior to estimate share of wallet. So this uses a few questions within the questionnaire to determine the likely percent of spend that a customer would have with you or likelihood market share that you would have versus your competitors. And that's already calculated and downloadable and exportable here with this market share analysis. And lastly, we'll look at Net Promoter Score. So obviously the analysis for your Net Promoter Score and understanding your promoters, passives, and detractors is a little bit different, which we can support here too. The last tab here is going to be Other, which is really, really broad. As I mentioned, every brand health tracker is going to look a little bit different, and the metrics that you want to track are going to look different wave over wave as well. So we've built out a flexible model to be able to track by any question type that you might want to have. For retailers here, what this might look like is categories purchased. So if you want to understand whether someone's purchasing sports equipment, gift cards, other things, you can measure that here. Again, you can sort by through brand to understand these differences and compare it to the category average or mean as well. So any questions that you might have that are unassociated with brand health or performance, but you still want to track over time, we do have the ability and the flexibility to not only report on those, but include things like statistical testing that's going to give you the rigor that you're looking for. The last thing that we have that's really, really helpful, I think, in going through and understanding differences and creating an executive summary is there was a lot of charts that I just went through, and we're about to go through even more. And it's really, really hard sometimes to understand what those significant differences are off the top if you need to look at every single chart or not. So we've built in summary tabs where you can sort through and say you are REI. You can understand exactly the differences where you performed stronger or worse than your competitors in the conversion funnel, in any other metrics that we're tracking, like categories purchased, as I noted, where you can run through and very, very quickly understand what those significant differences are without having to go through every single chart and create your executive summary for that particular wave of research that you've run. When we talk about those thicker, more diagnostic waves, that's where we get into a little bit more brand perceptions, overall descriptors. If you want to understand your brand perceptions versus others, we've not only developed a word cloud for you to go through and look at, but there's also this quick table that will tell you the top 5 words that were used to describe your brand, where you can easily compare brand versus brand and understand how your overall perceptions are varying over time versus your competitors. You can also look at particular attributes. Again, these are fully customizable based on your brand or industry to understand how your brand is overall performing versus your competitors. And with an easy scorecard view, be able to see perhaps how you, REI, are performing significantly higher or lower versus the mean for some of your competitors on those custom metrics. So again, applying the rigor of statistical testing in a really easy to read way. We also have an Other tab here to track any other questions that you might want to see. This could be things like advertising recall. You can search through open ends and any verbatims to understand those a little bit more deeply. Say you wanted to understand how your Facebook ad was performing on a 5-point scale, we can calculate those averages. Or to understand in a ranking question which ad was their favorite of the 3 that you might have posted this year. Those rankings are easy for us to calculate as well. So anything that you can think of that you might be wanting to track over time or deep dive on, that is here as well, with that easy to review summary, which will tell you quickly, Creative 2 had a significantly higher average score than Creative 1 without having to dig through all those charts either. The last piece of the tool is our wave over wave data. This is the most exciting. You'll see in these first 2, that only presented one current wave that I could adjust here with this left-hand model. This tab goes through all of the waves of data that you might have run to date to understand for a particular brand, how they're performing on the conversion funnel, if there are any significant differences in a particular current wave versus a past wave, as well as the same for your conversion metrics. So anything that we went through in that thin model where you want to track over time, you'll see that reflected in a wave over wave trending chart here. And that same summary tab that you might see in terms of differences in past and current waves, you can easily get that overview here. So where previously we were looking at differences in brand versus brand, here you can look at differences in wave versus wave data. And that's a quick overview of what our tool looks like today. That's a high level. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what this might look like for you or what you might be trying to build for your team. So I highly recommend, if there's any interest at all in discussing a little bit more what the tool looks like, what our advanced analytics can do, or how we can customize it for your team, please reach out to me and don't hesitate. My email is kbarnes@fuelcycle.com, which you can also reference very easily in the book a time button on this page. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and I appreciate your time today.